Hello, and welcome to the Gamer Librarian Podcast. I am your host, Adrian, and today I will be talking about the Nintendo Direct that happened earlier this week, the recent releases of Diablo IV and Final Fantasy XVI, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and much more. Thank you for joining. Now, we have quite a lot to talk about, especially in the video games department, so I want to really get the announcements out of the way. Nintendo came out with a really strong and centered Direct that happened earlier this week. They came out with a few titles that we've seen be shown off earlier, like Persona 5 Tactics and the Metal Gear Collection. I'm surprised it's coming out on the Switch. That's really great. They also announced Pokemon DLC for Scarlet and Violet. I'm not really into that, but it does look really fun as a DLC. It looks like they add quite a lot of new areas and things to do because of Pokemon as well. But what I'm mostly excited about for the Direct was that they announced not only Pikmin 1 and 2 on the Switch coming out, but we're going to be getting two new Mario games, two mainline Mario games, one of them being a remaster from an N64 title. The Super Mario RPG remake comes out on the Switch, and I'm so excited for that. Also made with collaboration between Nintendo and Square Enix, a title that I thought was absolutely just forgotten to time way back when, and the only mention of it you would get is obviously in news or the Smash Bros collection, like how they have collections of all older games where people are from. I mean Gino is being represented in this game, who's a huge fan favorite for Super Smash Bros in terms of being a playable character. And Mario RPG is what was the first ever Mario RPG game. I mean, it started the Superstar saga and everything after that for Mario, and it's really great to see that happen. It looks beautiful. The entire gameplay that they showed off looks really crisp and just amazing. I'm super excited to play that game. They also announced a newer side-scrolling Super Mario Bros. Game called Super Mario Bros. Wonder, and this just looks like side-scrolling Mario game that you've all known and love. It's going to have the same kind of power-ups, new worlds. I think even it's going to have new playable characters that I haven't played as before, like Princess Daisy and Yoshi. It looks to be very inspired by Super Mario Bros. 2, if anybody's played that game. A little more on the secretive side of side-scrolling adventures where you don't really know what certain items do at certain parts, or there's secret branches off of levels into other levels. Really, really wild stuff. It looks great. Last time we saw a side-scrolling Mario game was the new Super Mario Bros., which originally came out on, I think, the Wii U, or maybe it's a port of the Wii game, but the new Super Mario Bros. Series was what headlined the side-scroll Mario games for a while, and having a new one on the portable console, the Switch, is really amazing. I think that's going to be one of the best titles that the Switch even has. And after this, it's probably going to be Mario Maker 3. We already had Mario Maker 2, so after this, the only thing they have to do is just make another Mario Maker, and I'm also excited for that. Now, they had a slew of other titles and announcements. They're all smaller, but nothing really major and big, except for some gameplay that they've shown off for Pikmin 4. Now, they showed us a lot more this time than they did in the snippets and trailers that they did prior, but now we know that you can now go out in nighttime and adventure for the first time in the dark as compared to the other three Pikmin games. Now, I've never played Pikmin 3. That's just a game that I completely missed out on when it came out on the Wii U, and I know it's on the Switch now. I'm going to try and get it at some point, but Nintendo games are always the most money ever. But they did say that they put on Pikmin 1 and 2 for the Switch, so after I play Pikmin 4, I'll probably just go back in time and play through the Game Boy game, or the GameCube games, and then do Pikmin 3 for the first time is what I'm probably going to do. Now, Nintendo, I think, did a really good job with this Direct because, well, we of course knew a new Mario game was going to come, and I had assumed that it would have been a side-scrolling Mario game, considering we haven't had one in an entire console in terms of the Switch lifespan, besides Mario Maker. But Mario RPG was an absolute surprise, and I thought we were going to get a new Mario Odyssey 2 kind of game, like a new 3D Mario. Same thing they're doing with Tears of the Kingdom. That's a sequel to Breath of the Wild. I kind of thought they would go in that vein, but no, we're getting an entirely new side-scrolling Mario game, which is really, really great. Now, Nintendo did a little better than Microsoft, I would say, in terms of like the shock value. I definitely was left a lot more like, oh wow, this game's coming back, or they're doing stuff with this stuff. That's at least the general vibe that I got from their showcase. Certainly better than Sony's, absolutely better than Sony's, because at least they had like newer things to surprise us and wow us for, at least a little more than the other ones. But overall, this entire E3 time frame of the game's announcements, showcase stuff has been really good, really good. It makes me really excited for the future of gaming, where we're gonna get not just Spider-Man on the PS5 side, but Xbox has a slew of Game Pass announcements that are going to be really great. They don't have a lot of exclusive titles to the Xbox, except for maybe Starfield. That's probably the biggest one I could say, but I think the entire catalog, Alan Wake 2, all the Persona games, everything coming out on the Game Pass has me extremely excited. And I already talked about the Nintendo Direct stuff, so with that, I think I'm going to wrap up on talking about the announcements, and let me know what you guys think of the games that were shown off in the last few weeks, in the last month or so, because there's a lot to look forward to. A lot of these games look really polished, they look extremely fun, and we can only hope that they work properly and they're playable to a full extent when they launch. That's what we could hope for. So instead of games that were announced, let's go to games that have come out within the last month. And there have been two that I've been playing on and off between the time that I can. And one of them is Diablo IV. And this is my second Diablo game that I ever played. I played Diablo 3 when it first came out, and then I played it again on the Switch, which was extremely fun. And I love that game. It was one of the cooler RPGs that I ever played before. I liked the hardcoreness of it, and it really delved me into getting Diablo 4. And so when I bought it, I was like, okay, I'm going to do my best with this one character. If I like it, I'll stick to the end game. And I think that's what I'm going to do for this character. I chose to be a necromancer, and right now I'm on level 56. And I beat the story, which is great. I think the story is better than the story in 3, because it was the one I played. I think 4 story is entertaining because it has a lot of ups and downs. It has some real mystery to it, and the characters are phenomenal. I mean, they're characters that fully live in this world and just trying to get by and do the right thing. Really, really great. Side quests are also great. They all have their own individual stories and their own kind of tone and depth to them. Absolutely great. Even the combat in this game is leagues better than Diablo 3. Leagues better. It feels a lot more responsive. It feels a lot more arcadey. Your character doesn't feel as slow. Enemy types are varied in the hundreds, it feels like. I mean, you go out to any corner of the map and you're almost finding new enemies every single time, not even including the ones that are just in dungeons and bosses and stuff. I did play a little bit of the barbarian and the rogue, which they're also pretty fun. Barbarian is definitely the big damage dealer. He just murks enemies that are around him, and the rogue is roguey. He either shoots from a distance or does a lot of critical stuff. But I'm definitely liking the necromancer a little more. He can summon a big golem. He can summon mages and skeletal warriors to help fight. Also doing his own kind of attacks like blood attacks, bone attacks, and a slew of darkness attacks. I've been fiddling around with the skill trees, trying to find a good build, and the Paragon level up system has also been really helpful. In the end game for now, I'm kind of dabbling into a little more of everything, from the nightmare dungeons to I want to try and fight some world bosses, and then what I am currently doing now is trying to get all the shrines in this game. The shrines of Lilith are these little upgrades that you can find. They're collectibles throughout the map, and when you interact with one, you'll gain a certain buff, not just for the character that found the shrine, but for all your characters on your file. All your characters have that buff. So if you find a shrine that gives you +2 to intelligence, or an increase into some kind of currency limit that you have in the game, that will transfer over to all your characters, which is extremely useful. So if you're ever like, oh, I'm gonna start a new character. I don't know really what to do. I don't want to do that grind. Having the statues of Lilith really, really helps. And not only that, there's also a slew of other ways to help you level up your other characters. Like there's a transfer chest that most MMO kind of multi-character class games have, where you can just put your items in the chest and you have the access to that chest that all your characters. So what I like to do is I like to play for the Necromancer for a little bit and rack up some XP for that character while also doing some ingredients gathering, stuff like that. And then if I find or make potions, which could increase your XP level gain, you can transfer those into the chest, and then now you have level 1 like barbarian with 8 level 5 usable experience potions. And obviously that goes on for the whole playthrough, and there's certain potions have like level caps, so you can't use all of them on your individual low level character. You do have to wait to be at the right level to use those, but it definitely makes the grind a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. This game has a really, really great openness to its kind of playthroughs. You don't have to specifically do the story. You could even skip the story on your subsequent playthroughs after you've already beaten it on your first or one of your characters. Once you beat the story, you can just skip the entire option and just have a free character. You'll miss out on the items and the levels up you gain from that, but you won't have to be bogged down by sitting through the cutscenes and the same story missions over and over again. And there's also like the side quests, there's dungeons, there's I think it's 4-player co-op. I've only tried it with 2 other people, myself included, so 3. And yeah, I've been trying to get all 160 shrines. That's probably what I'm going to do throughout the weekend, and then we'll see where we are in that game. But Diablo 4 is incredibly fun. It's a very MMO-styled RPG game which I think is perfect. You can play it solo or with as many friends as you want, and it's just one of the little chill times I've ever seen in a MMO kind of arcadey game, because I could just pick it up, play through a couple missions, side quests, whatever, and just have a good time. I'm not bogged down by its mechanics or its menus. It's fairly simple. It is challenging at times. There is a little bit of that difficulty spike that goes up when you're fighting certain areas or dungeons, things like that. So you have to be wary of the skills and armaments that you have. But overall, it's extremely enjoyable, and I'm excited to get my Necromancer up to level 99 or 100 and fully do the end game for this game. Now, another game that came out, another prominent and famous RPG, is Final Fantasy 16, which came out earlier this week, and I just beat. I'll say it's like the Wind Aeon. I won't say who it is or where you fight it in the story, but I did just beat the Wind Aeon or Icon boss battle, which was great. The cinematics and the combat, the in-game cinematics for like doing supers and your small boss battle cutscenes, stuff like that, are extravagant. They're so flashy and loud. I love it. This game's incredibly fun. It's probably, in my opinion, the best Final Fantasy ever. I haven't beaten it yet, so I really can't say that with full certainty, but it has the best combat of any Final Fantasy game I've seen outside of Final Fantasy 12, right? I mean, those are obviously older, slower kind of mechanical games, but this has the full single character action RPG experience. You have so many attacks and moves to your disposal. There's even like rewards for things like perfect parrying, dodging, counter attacks. On top of that, magic and your super abilities. There's a stagger system that's always been a part of the more recent Final Fantasy games. I'm loving it. It's every single combat encounter that I have in this game is extremely fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they do well with this game compared to Final Fantasy VII-2 Remake, because I think the combat needs to be better than this game in that game. Final Fantasy VII Remake His combat was very basic, kind of clunky at times. Even the air combat wasn't even existent. But this game has aerial combat. You can jump, you can target enemies in the air and attack them. Attacks draw you to enemies up in the air. It's far better experience than Final Fantasy VII Remake. It's far better than Final Fantasy 15 in my opinion. But it has a lot of things from those eras. It has like the Final Fantasy 13 or Final Fantasy 15 teleport system that Nox has with his moves, where he can teleport to enemies pretty quickly or away. He kind of has something like that, and I hope that maybe in FF7 Remake 2 they expand on 16's gameplay, but just companions. Just give me companion options to like do team attacks and shit like that. That's all I really need. That's the combat. It's the best Final Fantasy game I've ever played. It's extremely fun, and it has me enthralled in its story. Its story grips you from like the very beginning. You play as a young adolescent boy with obviously godlike magic powers. And these people with these powers are coveted by the nations, and they use these people with the powers to wage war against each other, against the nations. If you've ever seen Attack on Titan, like the newer seasons of Attack on Titan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This has similar parallels to that kind of storytelling, where people with this power are used for political and war gains, and then you see them struggle as like people and soldiers in a world where they just want to be accepted and not hated or used as a tool. And I think it's really great, a really great kind of storyline for this game. At least better than the bachelor party in Final Fantasy 15. In my opinion, that wasn't very great. 13 was okay with the wedding being crashed or whatever they were, but I'm loving this story. I really am. I think Clive is a pretty cool main character. I mean, he's your generic main character. He's just a guy who's been living in this world, and he's gonna try to do what he thinks is right, but you're the player, so you can't really have a choice in that. It's a very single player game in that way. But I'm enthralled by the story. I'm excited to see where it ends, because it just kind of took a turn after, like I said, beating the Wind boss. And so now I'm just like, oh, okay, there's definitely a little more depth to this game now that a little more of the story was fleshed out now. I really don't want to have any spoilers on this like podcast for most newer games. I'm going to try and keep off of that. But I'm loving it. It's extremely fun. It's a smaller game than FF15, at least in terms of like what I've seen for the size. The areas are relatively smaller. You're not looking through multiple towns or big open areas. I like that. I like the linearity of it more than I've seen for FF15 or other modern RPG games. But that's a game I'm going to be getting back into this week. Try to sprinkle that in between Diablo 4. And I'm going to try and beat this game, hopefully, and get my level cap up to my Necromancer to like level 99 to 100 before Pikmin 4 comes out. Because I like to have these newer games fully completed before the next one comes out. Obviously, it's very hard when a lot of these games come out at the same time and they're already hundred hours long. There's even a New Game Plus mode for FF16, which I think sounds amazing. From what I've heard about it, the encounters have entirely new enemies and move types. Your moveset carries over, so all the summons and moves and skills you unlock will transfer over from the very beginning. That just sounds amazing to me. It feels like it's going to be a totally different and new experience than any other Final Fantasy game out there. This is a game that I've been waiting to play, and the fact that it's out now and it works extremely well on the PS5 so far. A few frame issues. The motion blur is definitely an issue. I think I heard Square Enix saying that they're going to make that a priority of fixing that and some other smaller bugs and stuff. But to me, that's not really that bad. I could play the game. My actions, they do what I want them to do, and there's no real game glitching bugs. So overall, I think it's a really great RPG. Now, to get into something completely not video game related, earlier this week, I finished my reread of The Road by Cormac McCarthy. May he rest in peace. If you lost last week's episode, you'll know that he did tragically pass away due to natural causes, and I took that upon myself to read the only book I ever read by him again, and that's The Road. And this is a book about a man and a child in some kind of post-apocalyptic world where they try to travel from wherever they were to where they end up along this one stretch or few stretches of road, and you get only a little bit of like their character. You really do, because you don't get their names, you never get their first names, and you never know where they're from. You barely know where they're going. There's rarely any real landmarks. I think a town is mentioned, like Rock City or Boulder City, so maybe it's like Colorado kind of setting. I refuse to look it up because I don't think it matters to the overall story. But it is a rough tale, because at every waking moment they're surrounded by the possibility of death. From the hellish winter cold that is this apocalypse. They're trying to trudge through these roads with snow and hostiles potentially, and everywhere they look is just another obstacle or some kind of encounter that could cause them to die. And the relationship between the boy and the man is so strained, but it's also, I would say, like wholesome, and you just have to admire it, because what else she's supposed to do in the situation? I really don't want to give too much away about the book, because a lot of the premise is the fact that you don't know a lot about them. But you do follow this man and a child, and they try to survive together. And the kid has such a unique perspective on the world, obviously, because when you think about it, the prospect of being a child growing up in this world, like, what's the point? What is the absolute point when every day you have to fight for? Every day is and will be a struggle. There's moments in the book where you can definitely tell that the main character, or I think anybody in the situation, would just be like, it would just be better just to kill yourself. It would be just better just to give up, because they're probably one of the only good people we see in the book. You see some people, you see other people. I won't say who and how many, but there are various types of people you see in this book, and they're not all great. But when you live in that world, you're just kind of forced into a weird mindset of, I think, trying to live or finding a reason to live. And that line between the two is so blurry, because what would you really have to live for? The man has the boy. The man absolutely has the boy. He lives for the boy. But the boy, when there's various moments when the kid is talking about death to the man, and then the boy constantly, it seems like the boy understands his role in the world is that he will die at some point. But what he doesn't understand is that how you die is something you can never really control, and maybe taking certain steps will be needed to prevent that, or just complete caution. It's an amazing book. It's an amazing book. Any kind of praise that this little smuck on the internet right now can say about it will never give it justice, because it's a book that makes me fearful as somebody who could potentially be a father in this type of situation, or somebody who would try to do the right thing. I think that anyone could put themselves in the shoes of being in this setting and just be like, wow, this sucks. This seems like an awful place to live and an awful existence. And, it's the only one they got. So you see them fight for it. You see them fight for it with everything they got, even when it seems like the odds of the world are absolutely against them. Cormac McCarthy hit it out of the park with this novel. He absolutely did. I think that he is a true genius when it comes to this particular book, and it's one of my absolute favorites. I will never say a single bad thing about it. I do plan on reading one of his other books later on. I think I'll read No Country for Old Men, although I have heard that some of his other titles are really extremely well written too. So I will probably keep an eye out on those. So please, if you haven't read Cormac McCarthy's The Road, or at least seen the movie, I highly, highly recommend you do if you like any kind of interpersonal human connection story or apocalyptic survival settings. It's phenomenal. An absolutely grade A phenomenal book. So enough about talking about, pages and stuff like that. But to end this episode. What recently came out this weekend or this week on, I think they still do it on Wednesdays. I haven't really been on the up and up on what Disney Plus announces now, but I did get a chance to watch the first episode of Secret Invasion, Marvel's latest MCU tie-in show, and to me, honestly, it does feel like the MCU is kind of dragging on. We've had so many movies and shows lately, and it doesn't feel like the status quo has changed all that much. That's just me. Obviously they're trying to flesh out a lot of their characters and storylines, and the Secret Invasion is not the same story in the show that it would be in the comics. Like obviously, even from episode 1, you can tell that it's not the same thing, and that's okay. That's perfectly okay. I don't think that the MCU needs to fully outright copy the comics, because they can't. That hasn't been a thing that they could do before. So what you get in this story, in the TV show, is a lot more Nick Fury, Skrull-centered, like espionage spy show. Very similar to Star Wars Andor or anything like that, if you guys have seen that show. And I think it's great because this absolutely gives a much better mystery, like a much more condensed and followable mystery than I think doing it with like 2 or 3 movies or having a whole bunch of other characters in it. I won't give super spoilers into it because I think that the shock value of what is going to happen in episode 1 and what could happen in the next episodes is far more valuable than anything I could speculate on. But I will say that the value of your superheroes being imposters is very intriguing to me, because I think that's something that needs to happen in this. It happens in the comics, right? Spider-Woman, I think, is a Skrull. I don't remember who else is a Skrull specifically in the comics, but I think that it has to be somebody a lot more larger than life. It has to be a superhero. I mean, sure, even supervillains could be Skrulls, but the entire idea of it is that you can't trust anyone. And to be honest, if Secret Invasion is only giving us like side small characters, people we don't really care about, as Skrulls, and no one really big, and I don't mean like political figures or celebrities from the real world like Kevin Bacon or Iggy Azalea. They had cameos in the MCU. I don't mean that. I mean like your mainstay characters. It'd be pretty decent if, let's say, Hawkeye was a Skrull after whatever happened in Endgame or something. I think that would be a lot more enjoyable. So I hope that in the end of this season, the end of Secret Invasion Season 1, I can only imagine there's only one season, I would bet $100 that there is not a Season 2 of this show. I would bet you not. But I think this season needs to end with at least one main superhero being a Skrull. Like, it just has to, But overall, I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited for the other ones that have come out, because I think we're getting the Marvels right after this, right? The Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel movie, the sequel, which is a toss-up on whether it can be good or bad. I kind of thought Miss Marvel was a really great show for Kamala Khan. I maybe would have preferred it to be just a movie. It definitely felt like it was stressed on a little bit, but Captain Marvel was, I think, as best as it could be. I think the 80s setting and inserting it as like an already past establishment was weird, but overall it worked out. It's Captain Marvel. I can't really say much about it. I don't really particularly like the Green Lantern kind of intergalactic superheroes, right? I think once you leave Earth, a lot of the time, you're very boring to me. Thor is like that; he's just some god, and Captain Marvel is always off in space. Same with Green Lantern. Like, those kind of superheroes have never been my particular favorite. I always liked it to be a little more at home, obviously, but it's still Marvel, it's still MCU nonetheless, and I'm still a big fan of it. I just think that obviously people had a lot of expectations, and riding off the excitement that was phases 2 and 3 definitely made season 4 feel like it's a lot different of a game, in my opinion. But that's just me, man. I don't really have much else to say on anything else that's happening in the week. I went camping last weekend. I'm planning another camping trip that might be a few more days than just a weekend. So I'm going to try and get out these podcast episodes in a relatively constructed fashion, on time. But that's really just it. I'm posted on 30 minutes now, which is crazy. I will say, give you a little tease on what book I will be reading next, and that will be In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. This book caught my eye in Barnes and Noble one time, and I was like, "Oh, this seems pretty cool." It's about a Japanese tour guide who takes on an American tourist to give him a show of New York, not New York, of Tokyo, I think. And it's seedy underbelly. I think mostly in dealing with this red light district and this underground sex scene, which seems cool, but then it also has undertones of a mystery kind of thriller. I don't know if it's going to be specifically any kind of horror or supernatural horror, but it definitely caught my eye when it presented me as a thriller kind of book. I will talk about that more once I finish it, probably next week's episode. So everyone, please stay tuned for the next episode to come out. This has been episode 14 of the Gamer Librarian podcast. Be sure to subscribe for updates on future episode releases. Leave a like and comment on what games or books I should talk about in the future. Thank you, and see you next time.